think you know what fear is. You've watched the movies, seen the jump scares, laughed at the fake blood splashing across the screen. But what happens when the terror doesn't stop when the director yells cut? What happens when the evil on set becomes something the cameras never intended to capture? Tonight, I'm taking you behind the velvet curtain of Hollywood, into the dark corners of sound stages, abandoned backlots, and cursed productions where the line between fiction and nightmare dissolved completely. These are true accounts from actors, crew members, and industry insiders who experienced things that no screenplay could ever prepare them for. You're not hearing about scripted scares or CGI ghosts. 5 stories, 5 productions, 5 encounters with something that shouldn't exist. Before we dive into the darkness, make sure you hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and tap that notification bell so you never miss when I upload these true accounts of terror. Now, let's begin. I first realized something was wrong when the assistant director started screaming at me for a mistake I could see, clear as day, didn't actually exist. I work background on big productions in Los Angeles. I'm one of those anonymous people you see walking past in the distance, sipping fake coffee or pretending to talk on a dead phone. It's not glamorous, but if you hit the right jobs, you make decent money and get free catered food, which in this city is a big deal. This particular job was on a massive studio lot, one of the oldest ones in Hollywood. I'd signed an NDA, so I won't name the movie, but it was a big-budget thriller with a huge A-list cast. We were shooting on a backlot street dressed to look like a New York neighborhood. Brick facades, fake subway entrances, wet-down pavement to make the lights pop on camera, the whole deal. It was a night shoot, which always messes with your sense of time. Call time was around 4 p.m., but by the time we were actually shooting, it was past midnight. The air was cold enough that we could see little puffs in front of our faces every time we exhaled, and everyone was wrapped up in light jackets between takes. The crew had those towering light stands set up, blasting the street in this harsh white glow that made the 5 storefronts look weirdly more real than they did during the day. We were doing a wide shot. The main actor walks down the block, passing a handful of us extras crossing the street, talking on benches, going in and out of a pretend deli. My job was simple. I started at one side of the street, waited for the cue, then crossed behind him with another background actor who I'll call Jenny. The first few takes were nothing special. We'd hear rolling, then background, then action, and we'd start walking. On cut, everyone would reset, and the PAs would herd us back to our first marks like sheep. On around the 4th or 5th take, the assistant director, I'll call him Dave, snapped. We heard, "Cut, cut, cut, cut. What the hell is going on with background?" Everybody froze. A couple people looked around like maybe someone had tripped or walked through frame at the wrong time. Dave stormed onto the middle of the street, glaring at all of us like we'd just cost him $1 million in reshoots. "You two," he barked, pointing at me and Jenny. "You cannot cross-frame that early. You're blowing continuity. We've done this 3 times in a row. Stop crossing in front of the storefront until after he passes." I remember staring at him, confused, because we hadn't changed anything. Jenny even said, "We're crossing when you say background every time." "No," Dave snapped, jabbing a finger at us. "You're crossing behind talent before he even reaches the deli. Watch playback if you don't believe me." He gestured toward the video village, that cluster of monitors and directors, chairs where the higher-ups sit. Everyone's eyes tracked over there. They rolled back the last take on the central monitor. We all stood there, crowded around, watching the little screen. The shot started. The actor entered frame, walking down the sidewalk lined with fake storefronts and lampposts. Extras moved naturally, a couple with a stroller, a dog walker, a guy with a briefcase. Then he passed the deli, which had a red awning over it. On screen, just past that deli, I saw myself and Jenny. Only we were walking earlier than we were supposed to. We crossed behind the main actor way up the block, at least 20 feet earlier than where we had been instructed to cross. We were clear as day, moving from right to left in frame, our faces lit by the streetlights. "See that?" Dave said, his voice tense. "That's what I'm talking about." I just stared, because I could feel this tight knot starting in my stomach. That wasn't what we had done. In reality, we had been standing still on our marks when that moment played out. I knew it. Jenny knew it. She looked as unsettled as I felt. "Can we see another take?" she asked in a quiet voice. Dave huffed, but nodded at the playback operator. "Fine. Previous one." They queued up the take before that. Same scene, same blocking. The actor walked past the deli, and again, in the background up the block, there we were, me and Jenny, crossing too early, doing the wrong thing. Only here's the problem. We're in wardrobe. Background on big movies like this always wears number tags for continuity. They're usually pinned under jackets, but when we move, sometimes they peek out. On that second playback, I could see the corner of my number tag sticking out under my coat. It was the same number I currently had pinned on. That alone could be explained as a continuity issue if we had actually moved wrong. But we hadn't. I was absolutely positive. I could still feel the chill from standing in one place on the asphalt. Jenny whispered, "We didn't do that. We were standing right here." Dave rolled his eyes, clearly thinking we were trying to cover ourselves. "Look, you're thrown off or something. Just stick to the cue and we're good. Reset." We walked back to our marks. As we moved, Jenny leaned closer and said, "I swear to God, I didn't move. I'm not crazy, right?" "No," I said. "We didn't cross until after the deli, exactly like rehearsal." The thing was, it didn't feel like a simple on-set misunderstanding. Something about seeing myself moving on a screen in a way that I knew I hadn't just messed with my head. We went again. This time, I was hypersensitive to every cue. "Rolling," came from the sound guy. "Background," Dave yelled, a little impatient now. "Action." I watched the main actor approach the deli sign. I didn't move. I could see Jenny out of the corner of my eye, also rooted in place. Pooh walked past the red awning. Only then did we step off the curb and cross, exactly as directed. "Cut!" "Good. Moving on," the director called out. No one yelled at us that time, so I figured we were clear. A grip walked by, muttering something about finally getting it in the can. People relaxed a bit. Curiosity got the better of me during the setup for the next angle. I wandered toward Video Village under the pretense of staying out of the way. One of the PAs tried to shoo me back, but the script supervisor, who I'd chatted with earlier, waved me over and said it was fine for a second. On the monitor, they were checking the last wide shot. I watched, breathing shallow without really meaning to, as the actor walked. The extras flowed around him, and he passed the deli. Immediately, my eyes went to the spot where I knew we'd been standing, waiting. That's when I felt this icy tingle at the back of my neck. We were there twice. One version of me and Jenny was standing on our marks, still as statues, waiting for the cue. Another version of us, identical clothing, identical hair, was crossing behind the actor way too early, just like in the previous takes. Two pairs of us in the same shot. No one else seemed to catch it. The director was focused on the actor's performance. The DP was checking the lighting. Only the script supervisor and I were really staring at the corners of the frame. Her brow furrowed. Then she leaned in closer, squinting. "Do you see that?" I asked her quietly, not wanting to draw attention. She didn't answer right away. Then she let out a forced little laugh. "Probably just a monitor artifact," she said. But the way she said it told me she didn't believe that at all. "Like a glitch?" I asked. "Yeah, sometimes. The split feed can..." she started, then cut herself off. "You know what? Don't worry about it. Reset for the next scene, okay? Crafty's got coffee." She gently steered me away, walked back to my spot, my mind racing. A glitch might explain one extra copy of us, but why only us? And why had we apparently been early multiple times before? As night dragged on, weird little things started piling up. In one setup, the sound team halted a take halfway through because they were hearing what they described as crosstalk. That's when another radio channel bleeds into your feed. Only this didn't sound like radio. I heard it too, faintly, because I was standing near the boom op. It sounded like overlapping, muffled chatter, but not like crew. More like a crowd in an echoey hallway. The mixer swore up and down that no one on the lot was using the frequencies they were on. They did a sweep. Nothing showed up. It was like the air itself had picked up some stray conversation from nowhere and piped it into their equipment. Later, during a reset, a group of us were clustered near one of the fake storefront doors, a laundromat facade with darkened windows. The glass was tinted, but you could still vaguely see shapes behind it. I remember casually glancing in and seeing what I thought was another extra standing inside, right behind the glass, even though we weren't supposed to be in the buildings. She looked like she was wearing period clothing, which was odd because our movie was set in the present. A long, pale dress, hair pinned up. She was facing slightly away, like she was folding something on a counter I couldn't see. "Someone's in there," I said to the guy next to me. He peered in and shook his head. "Nah, man, it's all vinyl backdrops, no interior." I looked again. The woman inside had lifted her head. Her profile was visible now. She didn't look like anyone I'd seen on set that night. And then, without any kind of fade or motion, she just wasn't there anymore. No walking away. No shift. 1 second she was standing there. The next, the space was empty with only the fake printed interior texture of the set. I stepped back, bumping into another extra. He gave me a look. "Dude, you all right?" he asked. "Yeah," I lied. "Yeah, just tired." Around 3 or 4 in the morning, people start getting this weird, jittery second wind. Every laugh sounds a bit too loud. Every shadow looks a bit too sharp. I tried to convince myself I was just exhausted and my brain was inventing things. Then they moved on to close-ups, and most of us were wrapped. A group of us headed back to holding, this big soundstage where they keep extras between scenes. I decided to kill some time by scrolling on my phone, but service was spotty inside the metal building. So I wandered back out to the edge of the backlot street we'd been shooting on, just to get a signal and some air. The set looked completely different without the full crew there. Most of the lights had been powered down except a few safety lamps. The fake street felt empty in a way that didn't match reality, as if the painted bricks and plastic doors were watching me instead of the other way around. I stood near a false newsstand structure and checked my notifications. That's when I heard it. My own name, spoken behind me in a voice that sounded exactly like Jenny's. "Hey, Brown Eric?" It was casual, almost bored, the exact tone she'd been using all night. I turned around. No one. I was standing alone in the middle of the fake street. No grips, no PAs, no extras. The crew was all focused around the far corner where they'd moved with the camera. I rubbed the back of my neck and called out, "Jenny?" Soft shoe scuffs on pavement, faint and quick, came from my left. I pivoted that way, heart pattering a little faster now. Down the block, under one of the streetlights, I saw a shape. It was a person, on my side of the street, facing away. wearing the same jacket Jenny had been in all night. Same hair length, same beanie hat. She was standing exactly on the boom mark where we'd waited during the earlier wide shots. "Hey," I called, relieved. "You heading back to holding?" She didn't move a muscle. No shift of shoulders, no nod. "Jenny," I said again, walking toward her. Halfway there, one of the real PAs walked out from between two fake buildings on the opposite sidewalk. He glanced at me, then at the spot in front of me where I was staring. "What are you doing?" he asked. "I'm just..." I trailed off because when I looked back, the figure was gone. There was nothing under that streetlight, just a circle of pale yellow on damp concrete and a piece of tape marking someone's previous cue. "Thought I saw Jenny," I said weakly. The PA frowned. "She checked out 20 minutes ago. Van took her group back to parking. Wrap slip and everything." I just stood there, my mind running through what he'd said. She was gone. Off the lot. Yet I had heard her voice behind me, clear and unmistakable. And I had seen her shape up ahead. The PA clapped my shoulder. "Don't wander around alone, all right? Security gets weird about that." I nodded and watched him head off. The rest of the night I stayed in holding until they released us. On my way out, as we were herded toward the gate to check out and get our vouchers signed, I noticed the script supervisor again. She was talking quietly with a guy from post-production who'd come to collect some media. "Can I ask you something?" I said when there was a pause. She looked at me, tired but polite. "Sure, as long as it's quick." "That shot earlier," I said. "With me and Jenny. Did you ever look at it again?" She held my gaze for a second, then sighed in a way that told me she'd hoped I wouldn't bring it up. "Let me put it this way," she said. "Sometimes cameras pick up things our eyes miss. Light, reflections, that kind of thing. When we do dailies, weird stuff shows up. 99% of the time, it's just some technical thing we can explain." "And the other 1%, I asked. She rolled the corner of her notepad between her fingers. "The other 1%. We log it and move on," she said. "It's not our job to investigate. It's our job to deliver usable footage. What isn't usable gets left on the drive." There was something in her tone that made me think she'd seen a lot more than she was willing to tell some random extra. "What about tonight's stuff?" I pressed. "Was that usable?" She hesitated, then gave a small shake of her head. "No. They'll probably scrap that setup and pick it up on stage. It's cheaper than trying to fix glitches like that. Good night, Brown Eric. Get some sleep." That was it. She walked away, leaving me with more questions than answers. A couple of weeks went by. I moved on to another job, then another. Eventually, that big movie I had worked on released in theaters. Out of morbid curiosity, I bought a ticket. The scene we'd shot that night was in the final cut. Different angle, different background, different blocking entirely. Whatever footage they'd captured on that backlot was gone, replaced. But there was a detail that made my skin crawl. As the main character walked down the street, the same part of the script we'd filmed, you could see, way in the distance, almost out of focus, two people crossing a side street behind him. Same pace, same trajectory me and Jenny had practiced. Just vague silhouettes, really. Easy to miss if you weren't looking. I tried to convince myself it was just other background from whatever day they'd reshot. It had to be. Then, during the end credits, they ran a quick behind-the-scenes montage. A few seconds flashed by from the night we were on that backlot, clearly identifiable from the fake laundromat I'd been standing by. They showed the director talking with the DP, the main actor rehearsing. In the background of that behind-the-scenes clip, you could see the monitor. On the monitor's little image, faint and grainy, two versions of me and Jenny were visible. One set standing still on our marks. One set crossing too early. The behind-the-scenes editor probably hadn't noticed. It was barely visible, and you had to know exactly what you were looking for. But I knew. To this day, I can't explain any of it. Not the double images, not the out-of-place woman in the laundromat window, not hearing my co-worker's voice after she'd already signed out and gone home. Maybe that backlot street holds on to old takes the way some places hold on to old memories. Maybe, in certain corners of Hollywood, time doesn't flow in a straight line when the cameras are rolling. The only reason I got the job that night was because 2 crew members flat out refused to step back inside Stage 12. I work as a night security guard for a private company that contracts with several studios in Burbank. Most of the time, my job is boring in the best way possible. Patrol the perimeter, badge check late working editors, scare off the occasional tourist who sneaks through a crack in the fence. I'm not law enforcement. I'm a guy in a uniform with a radio and a clipboard. But the studios love having us there overnight, especially when expensive gear is sitting on a soundstage. Those buildings are basically giant, windowless warehouses, and once the crew goes home, they can feel like enormous tombs filled with props and sets that look weirdly lifeless without actors around. One particular studio has a soundstage called Stage 12. It's one of their oldest buildings, a tall, cavernous brick box that's been retrofitted countless times. Every guard learns quickly that Stage 12 has rules. Rule 1, you never enter alone. Rule 2, you never lean anything heavy against the east wall. Rule 3, no one opens the door at the back of the stage. It's marked as a fire exit, but it's kept chained from the outside, and the studio's own safety inspectors have signed off on it with some kind of grandfathered exception. I thought those rules sounded dramatic when I first heard them. Every big lot has legends. So-and-so died up in the rafters. That corner used to be a morgue. Mostly, it's just ways for bored grips to haze new people. I didn't give Stage 12 much thought until a late-night shoot on a big-budget drama. They were using the stage to build a replica of a famous hotel hallway for a key scene. The production had been running late all week, which meant a lot of overtime. The regular overnight guard had already pulled a double, and by the final night, he called out. So they sent me. My shift technically started at midnight. I got there around 10:30 to get briefed. The on-site coordinator, a guy named Rob, walked me around the lot. We went over gate codes, emergency contacts, that sort of thing. Only big thing tonight is 12, he said, gesturing toward the looming black cube of the soundstage. A warm rectangle of light spilled from the open loading door. They're going way over schedule. AD says they'll be wrapped by 2. You just gotta make sure nobody wanders in after they clear the set. I asked the obvious question. What about the regular guard? Went home sick, Rob said quickly, not quite meeting my eye. You worked this stage before? I shook my head. First time. He hesitated, then sighed. Look, officially, I'm supposed to tell you it's just another building. Unofficially, just follow their rules in there, all right? Stay visible. Don't mess with that back exit. And if any of the rigging guys tell you to step outside for a bit, just listen to them. That last part stuck with me. Around midnight, I made my first pass through Stage 12. The inside was freezing. Giant air conditioners roared somewhere up in the rigging, blowing cold air over the set to keep the lights from cooking everyone. The hotel hallway build took up most of the floor. Long, elegant walls on rolling flats. Plush carpet laid down like a red river. Fake crystal sconces wired to dimmers, and a cluster of doors with gold-plated numbers. The camera crew was resetting for a long tracking shot. Extras in fancy dresses and suits milled around, some chatting quietly, others half asleep in their chairs. A couple of hazy plumes of fake smoke drifted near the ceiling, slowly thinning out under the lights. I flashed my security badge at the line producer, who barely glanced at it. I was just another invisible piece of the machine to her. Everything seemed normal until I noticed the back of the stage. Beyond the bright glow of the set, the far wall stood in deep shadow. Near the center of that wall, a single metal door broke the expanse of black painted brick. It looked almost like a submarine hatch, thick, dull steel, with a wired glass square at eye level. Around the frame, someone had painted a fresh red border, and there was a heavy chain looped through the handle, padlocked on the outside. The only light over there came from a small red exit sign above the door. It made the metal look wet in the gloom. I watched a grip push a cart of sandbags across the stage toward the east wall, the one with the door. Another grip intercepted him halfway and jerked his head toward the cart. "Not there," he said. "You know that." The first grip muttered something under his breath and veered off, stashing the bags near a different corner. I remembered Rule 2. I kept an eye on the door as I walked the perimeter of the stage. From a distance, that little wired glass square was just a black rectangle. I told myself if anyone was trying to sneak in, I'd see a silhouette or a reflection. That's all. About an hour later, they finally called lunch, which on night shoots is just a meal break, usually at a ridiculous time of night. People lined up at craft services tables outside the stage. Inside, the set fell mostly quiet. A skeleton crew stayed to tweak lights. Rob came by and handed me a paper cup of coffee. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just cold." "What's the deal with that back door?" His jaw tightened for a second, like he regretted stopping to talk. "Stage used to open out onto another building," he said. "Way back. They did a whole renovation in the 80s. Sealed off that side, knocked down the old structure. Door's still there, but it doesn't go anywhere now. Just brick behind it. People kept trying to pry it open, so they chained it." "Why would anyone try to open a door that leads to a wall?" I asked. He shrugged. "You hear things. You see little gaps of light under it when all the house lights are off. Freaks people out. Couple of riggers swear they've seen. Well, it's old talk. Doesn't matter. If anyone messes with it while you're on shift, call me and step outside. That's all you need to do." Before I could ask more, he walked off to deal with some paperwork. The second half of my shift is when things started to go sideways. Around 1:30, most of the crew had filtered back in, and they were racing the clock. The line producer wanted to avoid penalties, the kind of fees that kick in once you go too far over a scheduled day. Everyone was tense. Voices got sharper, tempers shorter. They were lining up the tracking shot again, a Steadicam gliding backward down the hotel hallway as the lead actress walked toward camera. My post was along the outer wall, near the electrical panels, with a clear line of sight to the back exit. They did a few rehearsals with stand-ins, then went for a take. The actress started walking. The camera operator stepped smoothly, dolly grip guiding cables. For about 10 seconds, it looked perfect. Then, out of nowhere, the Steadicam op flinched and stumbled. "Cut!" the director yelled. The director. What happened? The operator pulled off his rig, chest heaving a little. "I'm sorry," he said. "I thought someone stepped right in front of me." Everyone craned their necks down the hallway. No one had been near him. The AD swore under his breath. "Let's reset, people. We're burning minutes." They went again. This time, halfway down the hallway, the actress suddenly stopped mid-step and looked off to her right, toward a door that wasn't supposed to open. Her face went pale, the color draining under the makeup. "Cut!" the director yelled again, more annoyed now. "What is it?" She blinked, like she was coming out of a trance. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. I could have sworn that door just opened a crack, like someone was staring at me. Every eye went to the door she'd indicated. It was one of the set doors, just a flat-built wall with a handle, no working hinges. A set designer immediately walked up to demonstrate that it was firmly bolted. It's solid, he said, knocking on it. Doesn't move. The actress gave a half-hearted laugh, shaking it off. Long night. Sorry, I'm fine. They reset again. While they prepped, one of the older grips, a guy with decades in the business etched on his face, drifted over near me. He had a coil of rope slung over his shoulder and a tired look in his eyes. You're the new security? He asked. Yeah, I said. First time on this stage. He nodded slowly, then jerked his chin toward the back exit. Stay away from that door tonight, he said. We've had enough trouble with it this week. Trouble how? I asked. He studied me, like he was deciding whether to say more. 2 nights ago, he said finally. We killed all house power for a lighting reset. Entire stage went dark. Only lamps were the ones on the hallway set. Rest of it was black as a cave. I was over by that back wall, coiling cable. He paused, eyes unfocused like he was seeing it again. I hear 3 knocks on the metal, he said, tapping his knuckles against an invisible door next to him. Clear. Hollow. Right behind me. I figure someone's stuck on the other side. Maybe some idiot from another crew got lost. I pull my flashlight. Shine the window. He pointed at the wired glass square. On the other side, I see this face, he said. Real close to the glass. Just the eyes and part of the forehead, 'cause the angle's weird. Skin looked wrong. Too smooth. No reflection. No glare. Just 2 eyes looking back. Not blinking. I swallowed. What did you do? He gave a humorless snort. Did what I was told when I hired on here. I didn't touch the handle. I walked away. When house lights came back up, the chain was still there. Good as ever. Nobody else in the building. You're messing with me, I said, more out of a need to hear the words than any real belief. He held up both hands. Believe me, kid, I wish I was. I've worked on this lot since they were still shooting on film by default. There's a reason they stuck that chain on an emergency exit, and nobody raised hell with the city about it. He started to walk away, then looked back over his shoulder. If you hear anything from that door, call your boss. Step outside. Stage will take care of itself. That last sentence bothered me more than anything. They finally got their tracking shot around 2:15. Soon after, the AD called it a night. People started packing up gear, wrapping cables, breaking down smaller set pieces. My job then was to make sure nothing walked off the stage that shouldn't, and that, once everyone left, the building was secure. It took nearly an hour for them to clear out. A few stragglers stayed to tidy up. Around 3:30, I found myself standing alone inside stage 12 for the first time. The silence was loud. Without the crew, the air seemed even colder. The big overhead fluorescents had been turned off, leaving only a row of low industrial work lights along the side walls. They cast long, pale streaks across the empty floor. The hotel hallway set loomed in the middle like a skeleton, its doors slightly ajar from being checked and rechecked. The carpet looked darker without the bright key lights. The fake sconces were dark glass eyes along the wall. I did my usual walk, checked that all equipment cages were locked, that no doors were propped open, that nothing flammable was left under work lamps. I ended my route near the back exit. Up close, the door's chipped paint told a story. Layers of different colors peeked through. Gray, green, off-white, from decades of studio repainting. The chain through the handle was thick, a chrome padlock hanging heavy and dull. I shone my flashlight on the wired glass square. All I could see was my own distorted reflection, and the faint suggestion of brick just inches beyond the glass. "You're just a door," I muttered under my breath. I turned to walk away. 3 clear, hollow knocks rang out from the other side. They came so fast and sharp that my whole body jerked, like someone had shot a gun next to my ear. I froze, my heart punching at my ribs. The knocks hadn't been muffled, like someone hitting brick from far away. They'd sounded exactly like knuckles on metal. Right there. Right where my hand had been seconds earlier. My radio crackled on my shoulder, making me jump again. It was Rob. "How's 12?" he asked, casual. "Crew all out?" I stared at the door while I pressed the talk button. "Yeah," I said, my voice slightly tight. "Everyone's gone. Just doing a last sweep." "Cool. Once you're done, log it and head over to Gate C. Couple of editors are working late in post. That's your last pass." "Copy," I said. My thumb hovered over the radio button. I thought about telling him what I just heard, but I remembered his expression earlier and the stories from the grip. I knew exactly what he'd say. "Step outside. Call me. Stage will take care of itself." I decided to test my own sanity first. I waited, hardly daring to take a full breath. 30 seconds passed. A minute. My watch ticked loud in my ears. Nothing. Finally, I took a step closer to the door, then another. I raised my flashlight and angled it toward the window again, trying to see deeper. At first there was nothing, just my own face reflected, small and warped. Then, very slowly, another shape slid into view behind my reflection. It was pale. Too pale. Like someone standing inches from the glass on the other side, leaning in. But where eyes should have been, there were only 2 darker patches, like smudged charcoal. No definition, no lashes, no whites, just absence. My legs went weak. I stumbled back, almost tripping over a coil of cable. This time, I did exactly what I'd been told. I turned, walked briskly, not running. I remember making that conscious choice. To the loading door, stepped outside into the cold night air, and only then did I radio Rob. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm outside 12. You still on the lot?" "Yeah, in the office. What's up?" "I need you to log that the back door in 12 is active," I said, feeling stupid as soon as I said it. There was a long pause. "You heard it?" he asked quietly. 3 knocks, I said. Then I saw something in the glass. I don't know. I'm not going back in there alone. Another silence, then a sigh. "Stay out," he said. "I'll mark the building secure on my end. You're done with 12 for tonight. Go do your pass at post and call it." "You're not going to check it?" I asked, dumbfounded. "No," he said firmly. "That door's been sealed for 40 years. There's nothing back there that belongs to us. We log the activity and leave it alone. Those are the rules. You did fine." His calm acceptance made my skin crawl more than if he'd panicked. I walked away from stage 12, not looking back. As I passed the side of the building, a cool gust of wind whittled some loose metal up near the roof. Or at least, I told myself it was the wind. For the rest of my shift, every time I blinked, I saw that pale, smudged almost face filling the little square of glass. Not a person. Not a reflection. Something else pressed up against its side of that old, sealed threshold. Over the next few weeks, I asked around, quietly. Other guards, a couple of grips I'd seen on multiple shows, even an electrician who'd been on that stage since the 90s. They all had their own variation of the same warning. Don't lean things against the east wall. Don't open the door. And if it knocks, leave. One older electrician gave me the most unsettling explanation. "Back before my time," he said, "they used to shoot live audience shows in there. They had bleachers, a band, The works. One night in the early 70s, they had some pyrotechnics go wrong. Smoke, fire, chaos. People stampeded for any exit they could see. That back door opened to a ramp back then. He rubbed his jaw. Story goes, they found bodies piled up against it later, he said. Door jammed. People trapped. After they rebuilt, they sealed that side off. But a lot of folks on this lot think not everybody realized the show was over. He gave a half smile that didn't reach his eyes. Wood remembers, he said. Brick remembers. Some places especially. Stage 12's one of them. If something's still trying to get out through that door, I'm not the guy to let it. I still work security. I still patrol multiple lots. But whenever the schedule board in our office shows Stage 12 on my list, I trade shifts. I don't enter that building anymore. Because that night, staring at that thick metal door, listening to something, human sounding on the other side of brick and chain, I realized something nobody likes to think about in this town. Some of Hollywood's ghosts aren't glamorous. They're not actors or directors or tragic starlets. Sometimes, they're just people who came to watch a show and never made it to the parking lot. And whatever is pressing its face against the wired glass on the wrong side of Stage 12's locked exit doesn't care who you are on the call sheet. The most unnerving performance I've ever seen in Hollywood wasn't in a finished movie. It was in a locked theater set that, according to the call sheet, wasn't in use. I'm a lighting tech. I spend my days up on catwalks and ladders, rigging fixtures and focusing beams, while actors complain about how hot they are under the lamps I install. I don't care much about celebrity. My world is C-stands, gels, and amperage. A few years back, I got hired on a prestige film that built a full-size opera house interior on a soundstage. They wanted complete control, so instead of renting a real theater, the production design team constructed their own. Red velvet seats, gilded balconies, massive chandelier. The works. It was beautiful in a cold, artificial way. We spent weeks hanging and programming a grid of lights, follow spots, practicals, hidden strobes for crowd scenes. By the time cameras rolled, I could navigate that stage in the dark just by counting steps and feeling for cable runs under my boots. One Wednesday, I remember the day because they'd just changed our schedule board. We were told there would be no shooting on the opera set. The director was off with second unit somewhere downtown. Our crew was technically dark, but my gaffer had me come in to run some tests on a new dimmer rack in the afternoon. Just boring, necessary prep work. The stage door was locked when I got there, so I badged in. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of sawdust, paint, and that sugary popcorn scent they pipe in for authenticity sometime. All the house lights were off. Normally, if someone's working in there, you'll at least see ghost light, that lonely lamp they leave on stage in dark theaters. But tonight, there was nothing. Just a faint rectangle of daylight leaking under the loading bay door and the steady green pinpricks of exit signs. I toggled my flashlight and walked down the side aisle between the rows of red seats. My footsteps echoed in that strange, fake way that only exists on sets, too sharp, bouncing off carefully built walls that haven't absorbed any real history. I made my way backstage, checked the dimmer room, and started my tests. For about an hour, I lost myself in patch numbers and circuit loads. My phone was on airplane mode because it likes to interfere with wireless DMX. At some point, I heard it. A voice. It came faintly through the cinder block wall behind the dimmer racks. At first, I thought it was someone on a radio, but I'd left mine on the work table, volume down. The sound was coming from the stage itself, filtered through wood and set walls. It sounded like a man, projecting in that trained, theatrical way actors use when they think every word is the most important thing anyone's ever said. I frowned and checked my watch. It was just after 5. The AD's schedule had clearly said no cast on this set today. Maybe someone had booked a rehearsal without telling lighting. I killed my test pattern, pocketed my small flashlight, and walked back toward the wings. As I got closer to stage level, the voice became clearer. It wasn't English, not fully. More like English words twisted by an accent I couldn't place. Old-fashioned phrases mixing with something that sounded almost like Latin or Italian. I stepped through the curtain onto the darkened stage. The main stage lights were all off. The only illumination came from that faint gray wash of emergency fixtures over the aisles and the glow of the exit signs. Still, in the center of the stage, there was a bright column of light, a single spot. It cut down from the catwalk high above, precise and sharp, pooled on the floorboards. Inside that circle of brightness stood a man. He had his back partially to me, angled out into the empty seats, like he imagined a crowd there. Tall, lean, wearing what looked like a long coat that moved slightly as he gestured with one arm. His other hand clutched what might have been a rolled-up script. He was in the middle of some intense monologue. His voice rose and fell, rich and resonant, bouncing off the fake plaster of the balconies. His silhouette looked almost carved against the dark. For half a second, I was just annoyed. The board wasn't on. None of the consoles were patched. There was no way a spot should be live without me powering it. "Hello," I called out, walking toward him. "Who turned that on? We're not lit for rehearsal." He didn't break, didn't flinch. He kept right on with his speech, spinning slightly as if including the upper balcony in his imaginary audience. His words slipped in and out of clarity. And here we stand. No curtain call, no applause, only the hollow echo of... Then he slid into something I didn't understand. Long strings of syllables that rolled like another language, but distorted. I kept moving closer. Something was bugging me. He wasn't casting a shadow. The light that wrapped around him was too complete. Usually, when someone's in a spot, you'll see a clear shadow on the floor behind them, elongated. Here, the light hit him, wrapped around his clothes, outlined his jaw, but the boards behind his feet remained oddly uniform, like he was transparent in all the wrong ways. I stopped at the edge of the light, just out of the circle. The hair on my arms prickled. Up close, his clothing looked off. Not your standard wardrobe for a modern film. The coat was cut in an old style, something from the early 20th century maybe, with wide lapels and sleeves slightly too short. The fabric looked heavy, almost woolen. His shoes had that narrow, pointed toe you see in black and white photographs. "Hey," I said, louder now. "We're not booked today. Who are you with?" He kept going, but the words no longer made sense. They droned, stacked on top of each other, until it sounded like a recording played backwards. I glanced up instinctively, trying to trace the beam of the spot to its source in the rigging. There was nothing there. No open fixture. No lamp. The spot was hanging in midair, a cone of white that didn't start from any physical source I'd hung. It just existed over the center of the stage, tapering downward from some impossible point in the dark above. I took a careful step backward, not wanting whoever this was to notice my sudden fear. My boot scuffed the floor. The sound, that little scrape, cut through his monologue like a trigger. He stopped mid-word. The silence that followed was deafening. He slowly turned his head toward me. I saw his face for the first time. It wasn't dramatic. That almost made it worse. His features were unremarkable. A man in his 30s or 40s. High cheekbones, neatly combed hair, clean-shaven jaw. The kind of face you'd walk past on a busy sidewalk and forget 2 seconds later. except for his eyes. They looked exhausted, not in the sense of dark circles or redness, more like there was nothing new behind them, like he'd seen every possible response to whatever he was saying and had grown completely numb to all of them. He stared straight at me, and for a brief moment I thought, okay, he's going to ask me who I am. We'll sort this out. Maybe this is some method actor prepping alone. Instead, his mouth moved, but no sound came out. His lips formed words deliberately, clearly. I could track each syllable. But the only noise in the theater was the faint electrical hum from the emergency lights. I stood there, stupidly, watching him have a silent conversation. Then I realized something else. His lips weren't matching any language I knew. Not English, not Spanish, nothing familiar. It was like watching a muted performance in a dream where you can't quite grasp the context. I found my own voice somewhere in my dry throat. "Look, man," I said. "Whoever you are, you're not supposed to be here today. You need to check in with the stage manager or AD. I can call them if..." He lifted his free hand, palm out. It was a very theatrical gesture, the kind you see in old plays to indicate silence. My turn. The air around us seemed to thicken. The edges of the spotlight circle shimmered slightly, like heat waves over asphalt. Tiny particles of dust hung suspended in the beam, unmoving. I took another step back, fully intending to walk right off that stage and out the door. My right foot moved. My left wouldn't. It felt like I'd planted it into wet concrete that had suddenly set. I looked down, panicked, expecting to see some kind of cable wrapped around my ankle. Nothing. Just the scuffed wooden boards we'd trod 100 times during focus and rehearsal. I tried again, harder. My muscles strained, but my left boot wouldn't budge. My calf burned. No give. The man watched me with those hollow, tired eyes. Then he spoke. This time, sound came out. "Stay in your light," he said. 3 simple words. Calm, almost gentle. No accent now. Clear, neutral American English. "I'm not in any light," I shot back, my voice high and tight. It was a stupid thing to say, but my brain had latched onto the technicality. He tilted his head, considering me like an insect under glass. "Everyone in here is in a light," he said quietly. "You just can't see yours yet." The edges of the spotlight wavered again, and I realized something terrifying. The circle had grown. It now brushed against the toes of my trapped boot. My left leg felt suddenly colder than the rest of me, as if I'd stepped into a shallow pool of freezing water. The hairs on that calf stood up under my work pants. My knee tingled. "Let me go," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. "I don't care who you are. I'm not supposed to be on this stage when it's dark. Neither are you." He smiled then. It was small, almost a twitch. More like the ghost of a smile that had been performed so many times, it no longer held any real feeling. "You came in alone," he said. "You turned everything off. You walked into the house with no witness, but the boards and the dust, that's not my fault." For the first time, I heard a faint undercurrent under his voice, a thin, distant sound, like applause heard through a wall. It grew, spreading around us, phantom claps and cheers that didn't exist. I forced my attention down to my foot again. The sensation had changed. It no longer felt frozen. It felt anchored, as if something deep under the stage had reached up and curled around my ankle, gripping bone and tendon. For a moment, and I still don't know if this was my imagination or not, I felt a ring of pressure, exactly where the top of a boot would sit if I were wearing a different pair of shoes, a narrower pair, from decades earlier. I pictured an actor standing center stage, rooted to a mark for a monologue, his shoes nailed in place by the demands of continuity and blocking, doing the same piece over and over, night after night, until his body and the boards and the spotlight had imprinted on each other. My breath came in short, sharp bursts. I reached down, wrapped both hands around my lower leg and yanked. This time something gave, with a nauseating sensation like pulling free from thick, sucking mud. My left boot came loose. I nearly fell on my back from the force, stumbling backward out of the growing circle of light. The moment I crossed the invisible boundary, the cold vanished. My leg tingled as blood rushed back into it. The fine hairs on my arm gradually relaxed. The man in the spotlight watched me go. "You'll be back," he said, almost conversationally. "They always come back. New faces, new words, same cues." "I won't," I said, backing toward the wings. "We're done here." He turned his gaze out toward the empty seats again, shoulders settling into a familiar posture. The distant, fake applause swelled, though my rational brain knew there was no one out there. No audience, no crew, not even a stray PA. "Places," he murmured, "from the top." And just like that, he launched back into his monologue. The words rolled out, meaningless and yet dripping with practiced emotion. The beam above him burned bright, its originless cone defying the laws of our rigging. I didn't stick around to see more. I walked backward until the wings swallowed me. Then, I turned and ran. The door to the stage slammed harder than I meant it to. I killed my flashlight and stumbled into the sunlight outside like someone escaping a cave. My hands shook so badly, I dropped my keys twice trying to unlock my car. I didn't tell my gaffer the full story right away. I just said there was a major power anomaly, and we might have a bad feed somewhere. That explanation got me out of going back in alone again. The next morning, though, curiosity and a need to make sure I wasn't losing my mind pushed me to the production office. I found the stage manager, a no-nonsense woman named Carla, and asked if anyone had booked individual rehearsal time on the opera set the previous afternoon. She checked her binder, then her emails. Her frown deepened. "Nobody," she said. "Director was downtown all day. Actors wrapped at 1. Wardrobe wasn't even on this side of the lot." "Why?" I hesitated, then gave her a watered-down version. "Thought I heard someone on stage," I said. "Might have been a trespasser. Male, early middle age, old costume. Gave me a bit of a scare." Her expression shifted in a way I didn't like. "Did he say anything?" she asked. "Exactly. Do you remember any lines?" I thought back, the 3 words sticking out like splinters. "Stay in your light," I quoted, and "Everyone in here is in a light." Something like that. She closed her binder with a soft thud. "All right," she said. "You're fine. Happens sometimes on theater sets. Sound travels weird. Old recordings get into the walls. Whatever. Don't worry about it." That non-answer nagged at me all day. On lunch, I slipped into the on-set office where they kept reference material. Old scripts, design plans, research photos. Our film was partially based on an earlier stage production from the 1920s, heavily fictionalized. On one shelf, I found a worn, photocopied script from that original play. The title matched our movie's working title. Curiosity got the better of me. I flipped through. Act 2. Scene 3. A character named the Player steps into a single spotlight and delivers a monologue. The stage directions read, "He addresses the empty house as if it were filled. He has said these lines countless times. He cannot remember if there was ever an audience." Halfway down the page, a line jumped out at me. "Stay in your light." The speech continued. "Everyone in here is in a light. Only some of us can see it." My stomach dropped. I closed the script, suddenly aware of how quiet the office was. Later that week, when we finally lit for an actual scene on the opera set, I climbed the catwalks to check the real spots. I traced every fixture, verified every channel. None of them lined up perfectly with where that impossible beam had been. More than once after that, I'd be working late on another stage, and someone from the opera unit would mention, offhand, "Wardrobe keeps finding scuffs, center stage with no one scheduled." Or, "Sound picked up someone reciting lines when the room was supposed to be locked." Always in the same general area. Always that center mark in our fake theater. I started refusing solo calls on that set. I'd show up with at least one other tech, even if I had to bribe them with coffee. If someone made a joke about the ghost actor, I laughed along. But I never told them about the feeling of something gripping my ankle from inside the floorboards. I don't know if the man I saw was a fragment of some long-gone performer, stuck in an endless loop of a speech nobody clapped for, or if he was something else entirely, something that just wears the shape of an actor, because that's what that room understands best. I edit horror movies for a living, and the scariest thing I've ever cut into a timeline wasn't in any script or on any call sheet. Post-production is not glamorous. People imagine glitzy premieres and directors watching their masterpieces come together. The reality is me, alone in a dark room at 2 a.m, staring at the same 3 seconds of footage for an hour while I tweak a sound cue. I was working freelance on a mid-budget horror project for a well-known production company. Again, NDA, so I won't name it, but you'd probably recognize the actors if I did. The kind of movie that opens in October with a clever marketing campaign and a lot of jump scares. We'd shot most of it on location, but some key scenes were staged at a smaller, independent studio in Hollywood that rents out sound stages to whoever can pay. It's an older place with a reputation for being creepy. Every grip and PA in town has a story about it. By the time footage lands on my drives, I don't think about sets or legends. I think about organizing bins and making sure my autosave works. One night, I was assembling a scene set in a hospital corridor. The production had built a very convincing medical hallway on stage, flickering fluorescent fixtures, grimy tiles, the works. The scene involved our lead walking down the corridor while the lights cut out one by one behind her. Classic tension-building stuff. The assistant editor had synced the dailies and organized them. All I had to do was pull the selects and build the sequence. I opened the bin for that scene. Everything looked normal. Camera reels labeled properly, takes numbered, audio attached. I loaded the master shot into my viewer and scrubbed through. Our actress entered frame, walked cautiously past a series of doors, passing extras dressed as nurses and orderlies. On cue, the fixtures blinked off behind her in a staggered pattern. At the end of the corridor, she turned toward the camera, wide-eyed. The shot was clean. No booms dipping, no crew reflections. I set in and out points, dropped it into the timeline, and moved on to coverage shots. Closer angles, inserts of her shoes on the tile, flickering, bulbs. After about 20 minutes, I realized something odd. A new clip had appeared at the bottom of my bin. No label, no proper name, just a timestamp string that didn't match our slate system. Cam 1000 void.move. Weird, but not unheard of. Sometimes camera assistants mislabel a roll or a card gets reformatted late. I assumed it was some miscellaneous piece the AE had dumped in and forgotten to rename. I double-clicked it. The viewer opened on black. No slate, no tone, no frame, just darkness. The timecode burned under the image counted from 000, advancing steadily. I dragged the playhead forward. For the first 8 seconds, nothing changed. Then, ever so gradually, the blackness became less uniform. Weird gray shapes emerged, soft, out-of-focus forms. At first I thought it was lens dirt or someone's test recording in a case. Then the image pulled into focus. It was the hospital corridor set. Same length of hallway, same cheap linoleum, same fixtures overhead. But instead of our lead and extras, it looked completely deserted. No gurneys, no props, just the structure itself, lit by a cold, flat light that wasn't quite the same as the gels we'd used on shoot day. There was no camera shake, no operator breathing, no dolly creak. The frame was perfectly locked off, like a security feed. I checked the metadata. Camera, Alexa Mini, same as our show. Resolution, codec, all standard. But the creation time didn't match any call sheet. It was logged at 03:13 a.m., a day that, as far as I knew, we had not booked that stage. I frowned and dragged the playhead further in. For about 30 seconds, nothing happened. Just an empty hallway, humming under bad fluorescent light. Then, at the far end of the corridor, something moved. It was small at first. A hint of darker shadow pulling itself out from behind a doorframe. Didn't step or walk into frame. It simply thickened, like smoke gathering into the shape of a person. My initial thought was late-night crew member, but as the form resolved, it looked wrong. Not costume, not even like a normal human outline. The limbs were slightly too long, the head at a strange tilt, and there was a kind of jitter to the edges, like bad interlacing on an old CRT television. I felt my shoulders tense up. I reminded myself this could easily be a test shot for VFX that the team hadn't told me about. Maybe they'd fed it into the wrong folder. I checked the file's audio. There was a track. I turned up the volume. At first, just the low hiss of air. Then, faintly, a sound like fabric dragging on tile. Something moving without lifting its weight fully. On screen, the figure advanced slowly down the hallway, extending along the dull floor like a smear of ink. It didn't bounce or sway. It just glided, slightly stuttering in its own motion, as if existing on a different frame rate than the rest of reality. Halfway down, the overhead fixtures flickered, but not in the carefully timed pattern we'd programmed on set. This was chaotic, like a loose ballast giving up. For one frame, the figure was illuminated completely. It had no face, not a blank void, not a skull. Just an absence where eyes and nose and mouth should be, like that part of the image had not been recorded properly. The rest of the head was there, hair, skull shape, neck, but the center was a smear of static. My mouse hand jerked slightly, making the playhead jump. The clip snapped back to black. I sat there for a minute, forcing myself to breathe like a normal human. Logic kicked in. If this was a prank, it was a damn sophisticated one. If it was a leaked VFX test, someone had violated about 3 studio policies, dropping it into my bins. I opened the project log and searched for Void Movie. No results. I checked the media management panel. The file path for the clip led to a folder that, as far as my directory tree showed, didn't exist. Just a string of slashes and dots that meant nothing. Then I did something I still don't fully understand. I dragged the clip into my main timeline. The second it snapped onto track V3, my speakers emitted a sharp pop. All other audio muted itself for half a second. The timeline cursor jumped back to the beginning. I told myself it was an app glitch. They happen. But my palms were sweating on the keyboard. I parked the playhead a few seconds before the strange clip. Above it, in the viewer, the normal footage showed our lead actress about to begin her corridor walk. I hit spacebar. She strode forward, acting her terror, lights dying behind her in the pattern I knew. The sound of humming fixtures and her gasps played in stereo. Then, Exactly at the point where I'd cut in the mystery clip, the screen flicked to black for a single frame. Then, the empty hallway appeared. Seamless. The audio under it changed too. Our production track dipped out, replaced by that soft, dragging fabric noise from the original file. No visible edit, no crossfade. The waveform on my screen barely indicated any boundary, but my ears heard the difference. On screen, the faceless figure detached itself from the far doorframe again, just as before, sliding down toward camera. I watched it approach, unable to take my hand off the mouse even if I wanted to. At about the same spot it had been illuminated in the standalone viewer, the fixtures above my own desk flickered. I froze. Those lights weren't controlled by any dimmer I had access to. They were plain office fluorescents in the ceiling of the editing suite. For a brief instant, the room went darker, then snapped back. On the monitor, the creature jerked slightly, as if reacting. It lifted its head, or where its head should have been, toward the camera, or toward me. There were no eyes, but something about the tilt made it feel like it was aware of being watched. My breath sounded too loud in the tiny room. Then, without warning, the application crashed. Both monitors went black. The fans in my workstation whirred down. My external audio interface lights blinked out. For one terrifying second, I thought the power to the whole building had cut. But somewhere beyond my door, I heard the distant thump of another editor's bass-heavy soundtrack still booming through their closed door. Just my room. Just my system. The backup battery under my desk clicked and hummed, catching the load. I stared at my reflection in the darkened screen. Then, slowly, the monitors woke back up. BIOS sequence, OS logo, login screen. No error dialogue about a crash, no report prompt. As if I'd just booted up normally after a shutdown I hadn't initiated. I logged in, heart still racing. The editing software launched. I opened my project. The timeline came up. The sequence name was correct. The void clip was gone. So was the empty slot where I'd dropped it in. My cut was whole again, just actress, corridor, stagged fixture flickers, and nothing else. I opened my bins. No trace of the mysterious MOV file. No odd time-stamped clip at the bottom. Had I imagined the file name? The contents? The crash? No. There was one piece of evidence that something had changed. On my desktop, where I keep a few reference images, a new screenshot file sat alone. Frame 0713.png. I hadn't taken that screenshot. I double-clicked it. The image viewer opened on a still from the hospital corridor set. The angle was slightly lower than the camera's usual height, like it had been grabbed from a different lens position. The fluorescent panels above glared down in harsh white. In the center of the frame, about 3/4 down the hall, the faceless figure stood. Static where its features should be. Body slightly blurred at the edges, like motion smeared over a single frame. Arms hanging at its sides too straight, too heavy. At the very bottom edge of the image, just cutting into frame, was something else. The top of a head. Short hair. The beginnings of an ear. The framing was wrong, but my gut recognized the angle. It was like someone had taken a picture from exactly where I was sitting now, staring at the screen, and then composited the corridor image over it at the wrong crop. Behind the creature, in the static of its chest, I thought I could almost make out a vague reflection of a small room. Desk. Dual monitors. A human silhouette. I closed the image. My cursor felt clumsy, like my fingers weren't quite sending the right signals. I ejected all my drives, powered down the system manually, and stepped out of the bay. The hallway outside was bright and bland. Posters from movies I'd edited stared down at me, glossy and safe. A vending machine hummed. In another suite down the hall, a sound designer was mixing, completely oblivious. He gave me a nod as I passed. "System glitch?" he asked. "You look like you've been in there 3 days, man." "Yeah," I said. "Something like that." I went home early that night and tried to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that blank oval where a face should have been rendered. It's funny. I've cut plenty of gore. Heads split open, eyes gouged, all fake prosthetics and corn syrup. None of it lingered the way that absence did. The next day, I came in with a plan. First thing, I checked my media cache and autosave directories. Nothing labeled void. No unlinked clips. No weird orphaned assets. I searched the entire workstation for files created around the time the strange clip had appeared. Aside from the screenshot, which had a creation time that didn't quite match my memory of when the crash happened, nothing suspicious. Then I made myself open the hospital corridor bin again. All standard clips, no anomalies. I loaded the master shot and scrubbed through frame by frame, looking for any hint of the corridor empty shot or the figure in the background. Nothing. Just our actress, our extras, our fixtures doing exactly what we'd programmed. If I'd wanted to, that could have been the end of it. I could have filed the memory under late-night brain meltdown and moved on. But post people are archivists at heart. I knew the studio did nightly LTO backups of our project and media. I happened to be friendly with the data wrangler, a guy who's kept entire shows from collapsing into chaos more times than he gets paid for. Over lunch, I asked him casually, "Hey, you ever see any weird unlogged clips in last night's pull? Anything with a strange name?" He shrugged. "Always. People throw junk on drives all the time." "Why?" "Something like Cam 1000 Void," I said. He stopped mid-bite. "Where'd you see that?" he asked. "In my bin," I said carefully. "For like 10 minutes. Then it was gone. System glitched. Rebooted. I figured maybe it was a corrupt file you'd flagged." He said his fork down. "I didn't flag it," he said, "but I saw it." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through email. "We get auto-generated logs from the ingest software," he muttered. "Here. Last night's ingest, timestamp 02-1. New media detected. Cam 1000.void.move. But when the backup job tried to access it, the path returned null. Like the file was there long enough to get noticed, then wasn't." He looked up, expression serious now. "Don't mess with stuff like that," he said quietly. "Delete the screenshot. Tell the post super your system had a hiccup. Let it go." Normally, I would have shrugged that off as superstition. Bits are bits. Storage is storage. But there was something in his tone, something I'd heard a few times from old-timers in this business, when they talk about tapes that erased themselves or reels that came back from the lab with extra frames nobody shot. Later that week, our director came in for a work session on the hospital, scenes. We went through my cut, tweaking performance beats, adjusting pacing. At the end of the corridor sequence, there was a moment we both independently decided needed something. "Feels like it needs a stinger," he said. "Like a flash of something at the very end of the walk. Did we ever get any alt takes with a silhouette in the distance or something?" I kept my face neutral. "Nothing the script calls for," I said. "We can comp something in later if VFX has elements." "Yeah," he said, already scribbling a note. "We'll have them build some creepy shape in the hallway. Just a frame or two. Rumor bait. People love pausing and sharing that stuff." He grinned. "You know, make it look like we captured something on camera we didn't mean to." I nodded slowly. The irony made my mouth taste like pennies. We wrapped the session. He left, excited about potential viral screenshots. I sat in the dark for a moment longer. On my way out, I dragged frame wa713.pnrg into the trash. The system thought about it for a second longer than it should have. Then the file vanished. I emptied the trash. About a week later, the post super sent around a rough cut to a small list for internal viewing. Tight circle, producers, director, core creative team. I watched it in our small screening room with 4 other people. The hospital corridor scene played. Our actress walked. The lights died. Tension rose. At the end of the shot, just as she reached the final door and turned toward camera, there was the briefest dropout in the picture. 1 frame stutter. It might have been nothing. It might have been the projector. But in that single hiccup, I swore I saw, in the gray smear between images, a familiar faceless shape in the far background. Nobody else reacted. The scene moved on. They chalked any micro glitches up to compression artifacts. I didn't mention the void clip again. The movie eventually hit theaters. Audiences screamed, laughed, posted their own screenshots online. I made the mistake of searching the hashtag once. Buried among the memes and jump scare reactions, 1 tweet stopped me cold. It was a paused frame from a bootleg recording of the hospital scene, taken off a theater screen. Grainy, off color. The caption read, "Did anyone else catch this shadow thing in the back of the ward shot?" Zoomed in the far right corner of the compressed, blown-out image. Something stood in the gloom. Flat. Wrong. Missing a face. Hundreds of replies argued about it. Just a crew guy. Just bad lighting. Fake. I closed the app and haven't searched the movie's tags since. I got paid to stand where famous people stand. And one night on stage 4, I swapped places with someone who wasn't on the payroll. If you don't know what a stand-in is, we're basically human light meters with health insurance. We match the height, hair color, and general build of an actor, so the crew can set marks, focus, and lighting without keeping the talent on their feet for hours. On multi-camera sitcoms, we're everywhere. Before the studio audience comes in, we run the entire show. Every joke, every entrance and exit, while the cameras rehearse moves. I've stood in living rooms that only have 3 walls, kitchens with no ceiling, and front yards that end abruptly in black curtains. Stage 4 was home to a popular sitcom on a major network. Big names, big laughs, canned and live. I'd been the main stand-in for the lead actress, let's call her Riley, for almost a full season. We were close enough in appearance that, from the back, crew members would sometimes mistake me for her. The thing about Stage 4 was that everyone treated it like a second home. When you do a show week after week, those fake sets start to feel weirdly real. You know which counter in the kitchen has a wobbly leg, which couch cushion in the living room squeaks. You also start to notice things that don't fit the routine. The first time I sensed something off was a Tuesday blocking rehearsal. The cast had just finished a run-through for the writers, and they'd released them for a break, while we stand-ins did our version. I took Riley's mark in the living room set, center stage, facing the audience bleachers. The big hot lights lowered. Multi-cam rigs pointed at us from the front. The director called, "Picture, rehearsal." Beside me, the other stand-ins shifted into position. One in the kitchen doorway, one by the fake staircase, another near the front door. We started our lines, reading from scripts loosely. I've gotten decent at mimicry, so I'd picked up some of Riley's cadence and hand gestures. It keeps me from getting bored. About 2 pages into the scene, between jokes, part of the riser area where the studio audience usually sits caught my eye. The bleachers were empty. Show night wasn't until Friday. But in the middle section, maybe 3 rows up, I saw a shape. A woman. She was sitting very still, hands folded in her lap, watching us. Everyone else on stage was concentrating on their marks. The cameras were focused on us, not the empty seats, so no one seemed to notice. She looked out of time. Her hair was styled in a way I associate with old photographs, thick waves, pinned back low. She wore a simple dress, knee-length, with a modest collar. Nothing flashy, but the colors looked wrong for our set's palette. Slightly muted, almost monochrome, like she'd been pulled in from a black and white show. I flubbed a line. The AD called, irritated. Pick up from "I told you not to touch my car." I glanced back at the woman before restarting. Her gaze stayed on me, unwavering. No smile, no frown, just intense focus. We finished the scene. "Cut," the director called, then started rattling off notes to cameras. I used the chaos to glance, up at the bleachers again. She was gone. I told myself she'd just moved, that my brain had made a stranger into a ghost for no reason. Maybe a wardrobe assistant had come in quietly, sat down, then walked off without me seeing. Still, the image of her stuck with me all day. Later that week, during show night, the real audience filled those seats. Laughter rolled over us like warm waves under the bright lights. Riley nailed her lines. I watched her from the sidelines, ready to jump in for adjustments between takes. At one point, mid-scene, she froze. It was blink and you'd miss it, half a heartbeat out of rhythm. But I've watched her work for months. I caught the shift. She was supposed to cross to the kitchen, grab a mug, and deliver a punchline. Instead, halfway through the walk, she slowed. Her eyes flicked toward the middle of the audience, just about where I'd seen the strange woman earlier in the week. The live crowd didn't notice. They were reacting to an earlier joke. The director, watching on monitors, missed it too. Riley recovered, hit the mug grab, said the line, got the laugh. Later, backstage, as she was changing shoes, she caught my eye. "Did you see somebody in the house, like, center section?" she asked quietly, as if asking about a subtle lighting cue. Her tone made my stomach clench. "You mean tonight?" I asked. "During the kitchen bit?" "Yeah," she said. She rubbed her arms as if cold. She was in this old outfit. I thought it was wardrobe at first, but then I realized, no, that's not from our racks. And then when we reset for the second take, she was gone. "Older woman?" I asked. "Plain dress? Hair waves?" Riley looked up sharply. "You saw her too?" she asked. I nodded. "Tuesday, during blocking. No one was supposed to be in there." We both went quiet. The laughter from the next scene on stage bled through the thin door. "Probably someone from the lot wandering in," she said eventually. "We've had that before. Tours, you know?" "Yeah," I said. "Probably." We didn't believe it. Over the next few weeks, little odd things started happening, mostly during stand-in rehearsals, when the house was empty and the vibe on set was half asleep. Marks, those bits of tape we put on the floor, would move, not by a lot. Half an inch, maybe. Enough that camera would be a hair out of focus if we didn't catch it. Sometimes we'd find an extra mark, same color as Riley's tape, in a spot we'd never blocked for. Dead center in a doorway. Off to the side, as if someone else had been given a position no one had written in. Props would be slightly repositioned between takes. Not the classic haunted set nonsense where a chair is upside down. More subtle. A mug turned handle in instead of handle out. A throw pillow flipped to its reverse pattern. Everyone blamed the PAs, the props team, exhaustion. But it kept happening. Always in scenes that were heavy for Riley. Emotional climaxes, arguments, big introspective laugh lines. One Wednesday night, we were shooting a more serious episode. The kind where a sitcom tries to make you cry once per season. The audience had gone home. It was late. We needed one last pickup shot of Riley crossing from the front door into the living room, sitting on the couch and staring off as the music swelled. I was on the floor, on her mark, while the DP adjusted a lens height. "Okay, lock it," he said, and stepped back. They called for Riley to come in and replace me. I stepped off the couch and stood to the side, near one of the cameras. She walked onto the set, smiling, tired. As she passed me, I caught a glimpse of her face in the side monitor feed. For a split second, it wasn't Riley. It was that other woman, the one from the bleachers. Same wavy hair, same dress. Sitting exactly where Riley was supposed to sit, just half a second out of sync. Her hands were clasped in her lap, postured too rigid. Her eyes looked directly into the lens in a way Riley never did. Riley always played slightly off camera for a more natural look. Then the frame snapped. Riley's reflection snapped back into place as she lowered herself onto the couch. Nobody reacted. Cameras didn't cut. The DP rolled his shoulders. Only I stood there, skin crawling. "Ready?" the director called. "Picture. Quiet, please. And action." Riley did her cross, sat, stared into the middle distance, tears welling up right on cue. She was good. She earned every paycheck. Somewhere between her sitting and the push-in on her face, the house lights in the bleachers flickered. They were supposed to be off completely. Audience gone. Goodbye. That's a wrap. But for a moment, the entire seating area was bathed in a dim wash. In that dull light, in the same midsection I'd clocked before, one figure sat upright among the empty chairs, hands folded, watching. As the camera reached Riley's close-up, those house lights snapped back off. When the AD called cut, everyone relaxed. I swallowed whatever comment I'd been about to make. Later, in the green room, Riley and some of the writers swapped ghost stories about old stages. People love that stuff between takes. She caught my eye once, but didn't say anything with other ears around. I started paying attention to the call sheets in a different way. Specifically, the sections that listed stand-ins. Beside my name, Riley. Beside my fellow stand-ins, their corresponding actors. There was never a listing for a stand-in for the audience. That thought bounced around my skull longer than it should have. One afternoon, I came in early. The house lights were up, crew was still at lunch. Stage 4's giant door stood half open, letting in a shaft of bright sunlight that cut across the front yard set. I walked up into the empty bleachers. It's funny how different the world looks from that side. Sets you've memorized from the floor look shallower. Walls look faker. The cameras feel more imposing. I sat roughly where I'd seen her. Middle section, third row. The seat was as uncomfortable as every folding audience chair ever made. From that vantage point, I could see straight down the barrel of one of the main cameras. I could imagine what it was like to sit there week after week, watching other people live out emotions between commercial breaks. I tried to picture Stage 4 30, 40 years ago. Different shows, different sets. The bones of the stage were the same, though. Catwalks up top, lighting grids, trusses. Maybe once upon a time some regular audience member had come every taping, laughed at all the right spots, waited in line, sat in this precise seat, loved it so much that leaving wasn't part of their plan. It was a nice, rational ghost story. It didn't explain what happened next. That evening, final show of the week, we were short on time. The director wanted to run a complex, overlapping bit, characters entering from 3 different sets, tossing quips, crossing paths, not easy to block. "Let's do a full stand-in pass," he said. "Camera, just pretend we're live. I want to see how it cuts." We all took our actors' places. I stood at the front door, script in hand. Another stand-in the kitchen, another on the stairs. The audience bleachers were dark, empty. "Ready?" the AD called. "From the top, picture rehearsal." We launched into it. Lines bounced back and forth. We moved like a slightly off-key mirror of the cast. I stepped through the front door on cue, tossed my line, crossed to the center. The stair stand-in descended, delivered his joke. The kitchen stand-in hit her beat. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone sitting on the couch. That wasn't in the block. I turned my head, mid-walk, and my voice caught in my throat. A woman sat where Riley's character usually did during the scene, back straight, hands in her lap. Not me, not Riley, not hair or makeup or wardrobe. Her. The same woman from the audience, same hair, same plain dress, same muted, slightly wrong coloring, like someone had turned down the saturation only on her. Up close, she somehow looked both younger and older than I'd thought. No wrinkles, but something ancient in how still she held herself. None of the other stand-ins reacted. They delivered their lines right past her, crossing in front of the couch as if nothing occupied it. The director didn't yell cut. Cameras kept rolling. She watched me. Just me. I stopped talking. My next line died somewhere between my brain and my throat. "Keep going, please," the director called, thinking I'd just forgotten the cue. "Don't bail. We're just looking at blocking." I swallowed and forced my feet to keep moving. Cotton mouth made my next line come out rough. The other stand-in volleyed back, unfazed. I passed within 2 feet of the couch. Out of instinct or stupidity, I glanced down at her. Her eyes were gray. Not light blue, not hazel. Just gray. Like old TV static frozen. Her lips parted just enough for me to see the faintest edge of teeth that were too uniform, like someone had drawn a straight line across them. Under my skin, every instinct screamed to step away, to yell cut, to walk out. Instead, I did what stand-ins always do. I hit my mark, I delivered my line, and I left the set when the blocking for my portion ended. She remained on the couch, still, hands folded. The scene wrapped. The AD called, "Okay, that's good for stand-ins. Let's bring back cast." We broke. People stepped off the set, scripts rustling, crew adjusting gear. A grip walked directly past the couch. His foot brushed against where her ankle should have been. Nothing happened. He didn't flinch. He didn't look down. It was like he'd stepped through empty space. I hung back, pretending to check my script. Riley walked in, chatting with a makeup artist. She took her usual spot by the front door, ready for her entrance. The director called for quiet. Cameras rolled. They started the scene. From my vantage point behind camera 3, I could see the couch in the monitor's wide shot. No one sat on it. On stage, with my naked eye, I saw both. The monitor showed Riley alone in the scene, the couch empty, waiting for her blocking. On the actual set, 10 feet in front of us, I saw that other woman still perched there, the air around her faintly thicker. Her presence didn't register on glass or sensor, only on me. Riley hit her cross. At the appropriate moment, she moved to sit. The woman on the couch shifted for the first time, leaning fractionally to one side as if making room. Riley sat without hesitation, settling into the exact space the woman had opened. For a heartbeat, I saw them overlap. 2 silhouettes occupying the same outline. Then the woman vanished. Riley played the rest of the scene brilliantly. No flubs, no missed beats. The live audience laughed at the jokes. The director called, "Cut." Happy. I stood there, gripping my script so hard the edges bent. Afterward, in the hallway, I pulled aside one of the camera operators I'd known for years. "Did you see anything weird in that last rehearsal?" I asked, casual as I could manage. Weird how? He asked. Like, someone on the couch before Riley, I said. During stand-in pass. He frowned, thinking. Nah, he said. We were rolling wide. Just you guys? Why? Just thought I saw a wardrobe sitting in for a beat, I said, backing off. Never mind. He shrugged and moved on. Later that night, as we wrapped, I found myself alone on the set for a moment. Stagehands had left for a smoke break. Cameras were parked. The house was dark. I walked to the couch and sat exactly where I'd seen her. From that angle, the fake living room looked smaller. The staircase set piece loomed too close. The front door was clearly a flat. I imagined coming here, week after week, as a stand-in. Never the face on the billboard. Always the body that warmed the mark. Watching other people get the laughs you timed, the tears you practiced. I tried to picture my own place in that ecosystem, not as a temporary gig, but as forever. The idea sat heavy. Somewhere above, in the grid, a metal fixture pinged as it cooled. The sound echoed like the last, distant clap of someone who refused to stop applauding. I spoke out loud, to no one. You can have the seat, I said quietly. I don't need it. Something in the air relaxed, like a room exhaling. I don't know if that meant anything to anyone but me. In the weeks that followed, I didn't see her again. Riley stopped glancing at the same spot. The strange extra marks on the floor appeared less often. Props stayed where they were left. We finished the season. The show got picked up. Contracts were renewed. Stage 4 rolled into another year. I moved on to a different production eventually. New sets, new cast, new marks. If you're still here with the lights off and your headphones on, you're exactly the kind of person this channel is made for. Out there, people see Hollywood as red carpets and premieres. In here, on the Nightmare Index, you've heard what it's really like when the cameras stop and the stories don't cut to black. If you want more true horror pulled straight from sets, sound stages, and backlots all over Hollywood, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now. Hit that like button so this episode reaches more insomniacs like you, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss the next time we open the doors on another story that was never meant to leave the studio. Tell me in the comments which story tonight got under your skin the most. And if you've ever worked on a production where something happened that nobody could explain, I'm listening. This is the Nightmare Index, signing off for tonight. But remember, somewhere on some dark stage, they might still be rolling. Sleep easy if you can.